So my name is Bill Reddy. I'm a board certified licensed acupuncturist in Oriental, Virginia, and I'm here to talk tonight about biohacking and about how to optimize your health. And I'm going to share my screen here. And we can get started. Okay. So one of the things is a recent paper I wrote. It's considered a landmark paper. It's the state of 21st century acupuncture. So for those of you who are watching that just want to know a little bit about acupuncture, but were afraid to ask, that here's something that you can read. It's kind of boring. There's about 8 of us that wrote this, including people that work at Harvard. And it's 22 pages long, but it really covers everything from what we do, how we do it, how we're trained, where we're distributed across the country. It's, like I said, if you have trouble sleeping, it's great something to read, but it does cover the basis pretty well. I also co-wrote a book with a colleague of mine called The Scientific Basis of Integrative Health. And so I ended up doing a lot of literature reviews on everything from cold lasers to hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And it really allowed me to do a deep dive in things, including sleep, which I got to do a whole section on. And so I read about 23 books and about 400 papers to write the sections of the book. And I'd mentioned earlier that I also presented at a conference called the Integrative Healthcare Symposium back in February on adjunctive therapies for long COVID. And then there's also a paper associated with this. And this is up because I used to be a director of the Integrative Health Policy Consortium. I like the work that they do, and so I try to promote them. And so if you go to ihpc.org, you can take a look and see what kind of work we do on the Hill. We're an organization of organizations, and we represent acupuncturists and massage therapists and naturopaths and homeopaths and chiropractors and nutritionists and holistic nurses and integrative physicians. And I finished my term, and so I no longer work with them, but they're really quite an amazing group. So people ask, what exactly is biohacking? You can see on the screen, it's the practice of using science, technology, and self-experimentation to optimize physical and mental health performance and longevity. You may have heard of, who is that guy who, is it Christopher? I'm trying to think of the name. He's a biohacker. He had a documentary called Don't Die. So I'm sure you're very familiar with his work. And my colleague Eric follows him, and it's quite entertaining. And so one of the things that have become really popular these days is having one of the wrist type things, or the whoop on the ring, and you can pick up all kinds of things from heart rate variability to temperature and how you sleep. And metabolic chaos is something that my colleague Eric Shad works very closely with, and that I see a lot in my office. And you can see all of the things from mold exposure to parasites that can cause this issue. Let me see if I can hide this. There we go. So you can see the full screen. And microplastics, I'm going to be chatting about that a little bit as well, just because it's unfortunately in our lives, and the less that we can accumulate, the better. And so we'll go step by step. In my practice, the 3 major critical areas, in my opinion, are sleep, digestion, and elimination. And we're going to talk a little bit about each one of these and how we can optimize them. And I'm not going to go into a lot of biochemistry because I don't want to bore people. Instead, I want to apply what's the critical things you can do to optimize it. Because obviously, sleep is the glue that holds us together. And if you have poor sleep, then the rest of your life is going to be pretty bad. You can see on this infographic that 30% of adult population suffers from insomnia, that you can see that you can have an increase in heart attack by 45%. There was a study called the York study in England, where they studied people over 40 plus years and found that if you have 1 hour less sleep than your colleague, you have twice the chance of dying from heart disease and 50% greater chance of dying from anything else, including driving off the road, so car accidents. So there's a number of things you can do to increase sleep quality, and people may have heard of sleep hygiene, and that basically means just preparing yourself to sleep. So avoiding stimulants is really big, and I'm not talking about cocaine. It's fine if you do cocaine. I'm talking about things like coffee, for instance. That in the morning, you say, but I just have 2 cups of coffee in the morning. But the half life, which normally has to do with radioactive materials, there's also the half life of, of, pharm- of pharmaceuticals, and caffeine falls in that category as a drug. And so the half life is about, in some people, anywhere from 5 to 7 hours or even 10. And so let's say it's 10 hours to make it simple. If you put 300 milligrams of caffeine in your body in the morning, 10 hours later, you have 150 milligrams, and then 10 hours later you have 75 milligrams. So it follows you, and sometimes people will be having difficulty sleeping purely because of the coffee in the morning, and it causes a cycle. So I would recommend, if you are having difficulty sleeping, especially restless sleep, I recommend you just knock off the last cup of coffee of the day, which might be in the early afternoon. Limiting high glycemic index foods is also important, and especially after dinner. For instance, let's take ice cream. You get hyped up with the sugar from ice cream, that spikes your blood sugar, and then, of course, it's going to be difficult falling asleep. Uh, Exercise is known to help with sleep quality. However, if you do jumping jacks and really do something very vigorous an hour before you sleep, it will actually rev you up. So timing is important. Doing exercise throughout the day is fine, but you certainly don't want to get too out of control. Doing gentle stretching before sleep is fine. And they do have this platform that vibrates, and you may have heard of it. I wish I could see your faces so I could, see the reactions. But these vibrating, it's called like a full body vibrating plate, and it's really good for moving lymphatic fluid through your body, and they're not terribly expensive. So, limiting alcohol and sugar, of course, you hear that probably from your physicians as well. Some people will say, well, I just take a glass of wine after dinner to help me sleep. And if you look at the studies, unfortunately, it demonstrates that wine or any kind of alcohol actually disrupts sleep. So I'm sorry to drop that bomb on you guys, but it's just the reality of it. And I'll be talking about sugar a little bit later on, and what its biological effects are. One of the things that the scientists and researchers say is to hide your clock, because if you're having trouble sleeping, you open up one eye and you look over and you go, oh, 3 o'clock in the morning, the alarm clock's going to go off in 3 hours. And then, oh, it's 4:30. So they just ask you to hide your clock. The other thing is, if you have an LED on your clock and it's facing you, that amount of light can actually seep through your eyelids and can keep you from releasing melatonin in your brain and keep you from sleeping well. And that leads to the dark room. So if you have any kind of ambient light outside the room, it makes sense to get some kind of blackout curtains, something like that, to make sure that the room is dark. And the reason I have this one, and true, booty call is fine. What I'm talking about using a bed only for sleeping is that some people will watch TV in bed. Some people will read when they're in bed. And there's a lot of things that the activities end up not being associated with sleep, And cognitive behavioral therapists suggest that it's just a no-no, that you'd really want to associate your bed with sleep. And if you're having trouble falling asleep, then get up, move to a different part of the house for a little while, and then go and return to your bed. And so, what's the latest research on insomnia? So, one of the things is in the Taoist philosophy, which is part of traditional Chinese medicine, is that in the summer you stay up a little bit later, and in the wintertime you go to sleep a little bit earlier. And because we have artificial lighting, we we can sleep. Our sleep cycles get disrupted because of that. And so we don't live our life in the rhythm of nature, and we stay up later in the winter time, and then our immune system is affected and we get sick. Um, so what I recommend is to dim your lights as it gets later on, and I'll talk a little bit about devices as well, because people say, "Well, what about staring at my phone at night?" Um, Blue filter glasses are also great. You can get them at Amazon, although I don't want to promote Amazon, but you can get them. But now they have software um, and certain apps you can use on your computer and on your phone that wipe out the blue light. And so, what's up with the blue light is that blocks your body's ability to produce melatonin before you sleep. And so, any kind of bright light before you sleep is going to be problematic. And electric and magnetic fields, I wrote a paper that's called something about insomniac's nightmare as being technology, and that charging your phone at the head of your bed is a huge no-no. Um, that Wi-Fi, about 6% of the population are really, really sensitive to Wi-Fi. And so for those people who are having trouble sleeping, certainly shut off your Wi-Fi. I mean, if you're in a condo, it's going to be problematic because your neighbor is going to zap you. But if you live in a single family house and you've got a reasonable distance to the next house, try just shutting off your Wi-Fi and see if you sleep a little bit better. And interestingly, again, this is a Taoist approach, but they suggest that when I laid out my bedroom, for instance, when I moved here about 30 years ago, um, I oriented the head of my bed either to the north, the east, or northeast in that quadrant. If you live on the southern hemisphere, so if you're in Australia, then you have your head facing south, west, or southwest. And again, it's just alignment with the magnetic field. And there have been studies on it as well. What I've noticed sometimes with people who have trouble sleeping and they tell me, I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning consistently, and it's that alignment that may indicate hypoglycemia, which means low blood sugar. So during the day, when you haven't eaten, you skipped breakfast, you missed lunch, you're starving, you feel kind of tired and a little bit out of it. Well, when you're sleeping, your hypothalamus, which is a basal brain structure, is monitoring your blood sugar. And when it starts taking a dive, your body says, "Oh, this isn't good. I can go into a coma." So it says, excuse me, you got to wake up." And so if you eat just a small palm of nuts or some kind of protein right before you go to sleep, you should sleep through the night. And if you don't, then it can be hormonal. And so hormones is the next thing on the list, especially for menopausal women, unfortunately. They tend to have insomnia at much greater rates than men. And so acupuncture certainly can balance hormones, but you can also talk to your physician or naturopath, and they can get you on bioidentical hormones. Pregnenolone, I wrote a paper not too long ago about pregnenolone and its effect on things like sleep quality and brain fog, where you have what's called TOT, or tip of the tongue syndrome, where you have a word and it's just outside of your reach, and you think, "Oh my God, I've got early dementia," but that's not what it is. It's really just the fact that estrogen and progesterone imbalances can mess with you like that. And then I mentioned about the special apps on your computer or phone that are blue filters. And again, at the end, you can ask any question you wish, and I can always circle back if you feel like I zoomed through something. But I just want to make sure you guys get as much information as you can during this presentation. So optimizing digestion, that's huge. So we went from sleep quality to digestion, because if you don't break down your food entirely, you're really not absorbing it fully. And so you can have a decent diet, but you could still feel fatigued. And so some digestive issues will be bloating after your meal, or you may get a little constipated, for instance. And digestive enzymes, you can see anything that has ASE at the end means that it's an enzyme. And you'll notice lipase has to do with lipids, so that's what breaks down fat. Amylase breaks down carbohydrates, proteins, cellulose, milk products, dairy, etc. And taking a digestive enzyme that contains these plus more can be very, very helpful to you. Probiotics, which were a thing even 30 years ago, but a lot of physicians kind of poo-pooed it, and now they're getting on board with it because of the whole microbiome thing. And microbiome is just the good bacteria in your stomach. So getting a good probiotic that has at least 50 billion CFU, which means colony forming units, that would be appropriate. And you want to make sure that it has many different flavors of bacteria, and not just one particular one. And Akkermansia is something that is kind of hot and new. And in the IHS, the Integrative Healthcare Symposium that I presented at, there were some folks who were talking about it and were jumping up and down and pretty excited. And my colleague also was excited about that, the functional nutritionist. And I haven't done a lot of research into Akkermansia at this time, so I can't speak on it super intelligently. Also, okay, so you bring food into your body, but you're also eliminating toxins that may be collected as well. And so if you're not eliminating, then you can think about that toxic waste as kind of circling through your body, kind of like sewage. And that if you your large intestine can actually leak out some of that back into your bloodstream and circle. So that's the reason why getting at least one bowel movement per day is really important. And you can see that obviously if you're eating a lot of cheese, rice, stuff like that, you can have constipation. Physical inactivity, also just walking, will increase the motility or movement of your large intestine. Um, Again, pregnancy can cause some constipation. Drugs and antacids can really slow you down. Metabolic and endocrine abnormalities are a little more outside of that common complaints. Again, structural abnormalities, bowel diseases. Again, something like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, where you can either be swinging one way as diarrhea or the other is constipation. But so these are some of the common ones, and there are a number of things you can do to combat it. One of the big ones is hydration, is that if we don't have enough fluid in our bodies, we really can't get the poop out. And you can see here that there's a huge, if you're tired in the afternoon, drink some water instead of having a cup of coffee, and you may find that that's all that's necessary to perk you up. You get clearer skin, you have greater productivity. Water is considered the universal solvent, which means that that it helps dissolve stuff and get it out. And there's one of my professors said, the solution to pollution is dilution. And I thought it's great because it rhymes, it sticks with you. And so just keeping well hydrated can flush your system out. You may have had a really deep tissue massage and you felt really bad later that day or the next day. And it's because that physical movement actually does work some of the toxins out of your muscles, and then it gets in your bloodstream. So and the massage therapist will say, come on, drink, drink, drink. Also, as a joint greaser, that our cartilage is 90+% water. And so if you look at it under a microscope, it looks like a sponge. And so by keeping well hydrated, you also can maintain your joint integrity, not only the synovial fluid within the joints, but the cartilage as well. So getting back to improving elimination, there's both soluble and insoluble fiber. Both are necessary. One is more of a bulking agent, and the other one is more to get you to move. Um, we talked about hydration and exercise to get things moving. Things like artichoke, peppermint is good. Charcoal is more of a binding agent. So that's something that you can use on occasion if you feel like you have something in you that you want to get out of you. And opioids obviously are going to slow down the motility of your large intestine. And unfortunately, if you are on opioids, you have to take some extra fiber to try to keep moving. So I mentioned in the ad about how to trim pounds and to optimize digestion, and part of it has to do with how you eat. There was a Chinese presenter, and I went to his lecture, and he said, "You Americans eat like dogs." And the people in the room started sinking in their chairs. And I'm looking around, and he said, "You go hop, 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 hop. You eat like dogs. You you need to slow down. You chew your food." And of course, growing up, they say that you're supposed to chew your food 32 times. And if you do, it literally is liquid in your mouth by the time you swallow. So I'm not suggesting you chew your food 32 times, but I will say that the actual mastication, the grinding of your food actually breaks down your food better and gets to the micronutrients. And also, your saliva contains amylase, which is one of the enzymes that helps break down carbohydrates. And so, in the fifth grade, you may have heard that digestion starts in your mouth, and there's truth to that. The other one I think is brilliant is eating to 80% full. And the reason is because there's about a 15-minute time delay between so you have stretch receptors in your stomach, and as your stomach's filling up with food, it's sending a signal saying, more and more, I want to eat more, I'm not satiated yet. And then by the time it gets to be full, it sends a signal and says, okay, I'm done. But there's actually a 15-minute um, time lapse from the time that your hypothalamus gets that to the time it goes to your cerebral cortex, the part of your thinking brain that you actually recognize it. And during that 15 minutes, what are you doing? You're eating. And so you end up overeating. So by just eating to 80% full, you actually are satiated. And there are things called leptin and ghrelin, which are chemicals that kind of help you know when you're satiated. And interestingly, for women who are overweight during pregnancy, and I'm not saying they gained the weight during pregnancy, I'm saying that if they were obese leading up to pregnancy, then there's actually changes in the microbiome, which goes to the child. And then the child has a leptin and ghrelin imbalance, which means that they don't feel satiated and they're more likely to be overweight in their lifetime. So don't drink with your meals. This is something the Chinese may have a little bit of tea after they eat, but they don't drink with their meals. And most of us will have an icy drink. And if you think about it, if you take your hand and you plunge it in a bucket of ice water and pull it out and try to move your hand, it's going to be really um, almost paralyzed. And that's exactly what happens to your stomach, which is a muscle. And it actually massages the food and gets that stomach acid all in there to cleave the proteins and then squish it into the small intestine to get it to go. So, two things. One is if you have a cold drink, then it's going to really slow down your stomach. And if you look in your poop, you'll see undigested food. And then the second thing is that it dilutes your hydrochloric acid in your stomach, which you don't want. So there are two reasons why and it also, you'll chew your food more if you're not constantly drinking to wash it down. When we hit about 40 years old, sometimes our thirst signals are misinterpreted as hunger signals. And so it'll be 10 o'clock at night and we suddenly feel hungry when in fact just just a couple ounces of water will satisfy that urge, but then we end up chomping on something. And again, things like hard cheeses contain tyramine, and tyramine is a stimulant. So eating cheese before you go to bed is going to really cause problems with your sleep quality. Softer cheeses aren't as bad. Um, so L-glutamine is an amino acid that can help with sugar cravings. So if you just feel like, Bill, I'm addicted to sugar, I don't know what to do. Taking L-glutamine also helps seal your small intestine, and I won't go into the whole leaky gut thing. That's a lecture in and of itself. But if you Google leaky gut, you can see what that's all about and what the symptoms are. Um, we're always told the meal to never miss is breakfast because it starts your day out, and um, if you don't, your metabolism is going to be slow until you eat again. And that's been a misnomer, and it's actually not true. Um, and the reason for that is that in intermittent fasting, they've found that you can actually control your blood sugar better if you do, let's say, the 8-16, which means that you have 8-hour window that you can eat and 16 hours of rest and repair. We were not designed to eat 3 meals a day. We were really designed to, we chase an animal and kill it or forage for some food. And the time that we're not eating, our kidneys and our liver have time to recover. And, if you don't give them that recovery, this autophagy, which means the development of stem cells, which helps your body heal, doesn't occur. So I do the 8-16. My window is noon until 8 p.m. So after 8 p.m., I'm not allowed to eat, but I can drink. And you certainly do lose weight on it in the beginning, and then your body gets used to it. But I think it's a healthy thing to do. And of course, hydration is really great. If you're trying to lose weight and you just increase your water intake, you will start to lose weight. And you're flushing out toxins. There's a whole reason behind it. And once again, you can ask AI and say, all right, what's this thing about hydration and weight loss? If you were standing in front of me in a big room and I had a big screen behind me, I would say, I want everyone to repeat after me: sugar equals Satan. And for millennia, for forever, we really didn't have processed sugar in our diets. And then in the past 100 years or so, sugar has really gotten into our diets. And then you look at the incidence of cancer since 1900, and it's off the charts. So in 1900, an average American would consume about a pound of sugar a year. And you're going, uh-oh. So what is it today? If you include things like the high fructose corn syrup, et cetera, we're looking at more than 100 pounds of sugar per person. And interestingly, if you drink one Coke plus one candy bar, the amount of sugar in that is enough to shut down your white blood cells in half over the next 48 hours. And for those of you who go, yeah, I've heard of white blood cells. What exactly do they do? They're the center of your immune system. And so that if you think about your friends that are drinking Cokes, et cetera, they're the ones that have the frequent bladder infections. They're the ones who have the bronchitis they can't seem to shake. There's a reason for that. It's because their immune system is shot, and bugs are opportunistic and can take advantage of them. So if you get a chance, there's something on the internet called 76 Ways Sugar Can Ruin Your Health. And you can see about suppressing the immune system. You can see about feeding cancer cells. So it's not that sugar equals cancer. It's that's vastly simplified. Although sugar does in fact increase inflammation in our bodies, then inflammation does cause a lot of chronic diseases. But it definitely is connected with the development of these types of cancers from breast, ovaries, prostate, etc. To continue on this harping, it throws off your mineral balance. It pulls calcium from the bones. And so our body's pH system is really, really sensitive because our blood pH, if it gets off by just a few hundredths of a percent, it can kill you. And so when you drink a soda, in order to balance out that single soda, you would have to drink about 30 or more glasses of water to try to balance that out, which is nearly impossible. So, in chemistry, you may remember that there's a way of balancing a solution or buffering a solution, and you do that with salt, certain types of salts. And in your body, it's calcium salts. And there are children who are having fractures today because they're drinking so many sodas. And it's not just the sugar in the soda, there's also some phosphorus, which also can cause some trouble. Also, sugar strips. It strips collagen from your skin, and so it can cause wrinkles. I'm 60. Thank God I learned about sugar early on, and so I really have backed off from the sugar thing. When I was an engineer, I certainly loved donuts, and I did eat donuts every Friday. We'd come in, we called them fat pills, and we would have a dozen donuts and share them among ourselves. So once you find out what it does for you or to you, you're not terribly interested in it. And you also see varicose veins and hemorrhoids because it weakens the walls of our veins and arteries. Oops, missed that one. Let me see. Well, I can't go back, so I'll just move forward. Um, Again, if you were in front of me, I'd ask a show of hands, see how many people know what nootropics are. And nootropics are just anything that can improve either athletic performance or cognitive improvement, anything like that, stuff that will increase VO2 max, things that will improve your sleep quality, for instance. And so some of the common ones, you've got lion's mane, which is part of traditional Chinese medicine, along with rhodiola and schisandra. Um, Ashwagandha is really great. You can take about 100 milligrams about 11 o'clock in the morning, and that will really help you sleep. And also for those of you who are athletes, it also helps with athletic performance as well. And nicotine, I didn't realize that nicotine was a nootropic until I started doing research in long COVID and found that people who have brain fog and have a number of other issues can have improvement through nicotine patches. And you would start at about 3.25 milligrams. So you'd cut a 7.5 milligram in half and stick it on you. Do that for a few days and then move up to 7 milligrams and do that for about a week. And that can, if you had long COVID specifically, it crowds out the ACE receptors that the spike protein is drawn to. So anyway, nicotine can be used. It also is addictive, and so that's one of the negative aspects of it. But it's something that it's in my scope of practice to recommend. And I don't know why that's here, so I do apologize for that. It's almost like it started from scratch. Okay, I'm going to step out and get back to where we were. I don't know why that glitch occurred. Okay, let's get back going. So when I graduated from acupuncture school, we didn't really talk too much about toxins because when traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture was practiced, there really were a few natural toxins, but for the most part, not much. But today, just just cleaning agents. You should wear rubber gloves because our skin is like a sponge and can suck that up and get into our bloodstream. Clearly, that we have environmental toxins from industry, from smoking. Uh, if you look at antiperspirants, that they contain aluminum oxide, and that can get into our bloodstream and over time increase the chances of dementia. And so I would recommend that you use the deodorant instead of the antiperspirant. If you look at the word antiperspirant, it keeps you from perspiring, and it does so by gluing your skin. And so you end up sweating in other parts of your body. But our armpits are one of the places that have glands that have pheromones, and that's the reason why we tend to smell a little bit. Also, there are chemicals in colognes that are called phthalates, spelled Phthalates, and they're problematic. And then there's also mercury amalgams in our teeth that over time can outgas, and that mercury is considered a neurotoxin. And there's an amazing video online, if you look, where they put like literally a microgram, the tiniest amount of mercury in a petri dish with brain cells, and the brain cells died. And so it was really quite a graphic in, indication of what mercury can do to you. Here is a tub, and one of the people, physicians that do environmental medicine, will say that you can consider that your body is like a tub, and the drain is the detoxification organs, like your kidneys and your liver, and also your skin. And that the faucet represents how much toxicity is getting into your body, and the size of your tub kind of says, well, you have a certain specific volume, and then once that's filled, so to speak, then you may start having symptoms like your skin will have issues, which will demonstrate a high toxic load, for instance. And so you have a couple choices. You can try to slow down or shut off the faucet, so you're trying to um, mitigate or reduce your exposure to these things, like deodorants and clones, et cetera. When you're pumping your gas, just take a couple steps back instead of actually breathing in the fumes. It really makes a difference. Or if you can open up your drain, which you can optimize your liver and kidney function, then is also something called skin brushing, which is something that the naturopathic physicians are a big fan of. And skin brushing just really helps with lymphatic movement, and the lymph system is like branches throughout your whole body, and that can be helpful as well. So I mentioned about microplastics. You can see that we inhale about 3,200 larger microplastic particles and about 68,000 per day, and that they're found throughout our bodies. So what can we do to help resolve that? Um, One thing is the sheets that you have. Take a look and see what kind of sheets you have. And there are sheets that are either 100% cotton, or there's some that are made out of bamboo, which sounds like getting under your fingernails, but actually bamboo can make some pretty nice sheets. There's a number of other things you can do, because when you jump into bed, poof, you have all these microplastics that you're just inhaling. Another one, that's big one, is when you pull out your dryer um, uh, dust collector and you scoop that out, hold your breath. Just scoop, hold your breath, get it, put it into a Ziploc bag or something, so that if you just throw it in your trash can and then you throw more things in the trash can, you're going to just poof, and you're going to be breathing it again. Unfortunately, even our clothing that contain microplastics, we will inhale. So microplastics can be inhaled, they can be consumed. There are microplastics found in fish, for instance. And those fancy the tea bags that aren't the typical paper ones, the ones that are kind of triangular and look like a micro mesh. Big time microplastic. We apparently ingest or eat something like a credit card of plastic every week or something like that. I don't know the exact stat, but you get my point. And so these microplastics cause inflammation, cause oxidative stress. They can mess with our immune system. There's tissue damage. It can even screw up our microbiome, which means that our good and bad bacteria in our gut, which is our small intestine, is disrupted. There are metabolic effects. There's also something that's called uh, what is it? An endocrine disruptor. And an endocrine disruptor are things like BPA or bisphenol A, and these things can mimic estrogens. So they're called xenoestrogens, or things that are like estrogen compounds. And if you look at the amount of estrogen receptor type cancers are on the rise, and that's due to our exposure to these things. And with detox, there are things called binders. And what binders are things like bentonite clay, charcoal. These bind to what's in your body and get them out of your body. And some are good for heavy metals. Charcoal is known to grab dioxins and mycotoxins. Um, uh, that should be aflatoxin, not aflatoxin. Sorry about that. But so you can look it up. Broken cell chlorella and spirulina are considered green foods, and you may have heard of like the powdered green foods. Not only do they help with the shift in your pH, so they make you a little more alkaline, which means less inflamed. They also will chemically bind to heavy metals in your body. So broken cell chlorella and spirulina are great for exposure to aluminum, lead, and mercury. And here's an example of some detoxification products that I commonly recommend. Harmony Formulas has some good stuff. Thorne has some. There's one by a Standard Process, and I can show you how you can get access to some of these products a little bit later in the presentation. But just know that they're out there. Typically, like for instance, let's say. The standard process protocol is 21 days. So you go you you go 3 weeks, and you can't have any alcohol, no processed food, no caffeine, and everyone's going, oh no, not the caffeine. And a whole host of other things. So you just have a very, very clean diet for 3 weeks, and it allows your body to detoxify. And then you are taking these supplements and shakes and things like that that help support your detoxification organs, your liver and your kidney, increase glutathione, which is a very powerful antioxidant and detoxifier that's produced in your liver. Now, speaking of standard process, there was a guy by the name of Royal Lee, and he made a statement in 1936 that basically said, unless something is done about poor nutrient content in the soil, there will be a serious rise in degenerative diseases within 50 years. And if you look at 50 plus 36, that's 1986. So you can see heart disease, diabetes, obesity, all of these things, ADD, ADHD, are really on the rise. And things like magnesium. A green pepper has 40% less magnesium than it did in 1960. And so if the mineral's not in our soil, it doesn't make it in our food. And if it doesn't make it in our food, it doesn't make it into our bodies. And so what you really want to have is really organic food, because then it's not going to be sprayed with glyphosate, which is found in Roundup. I had a great slide that said organic food, or as our grandparents called it, food. And I really liked that. Just kind of really brings it home. So I had made mention about acid and alkaline. And with our bodies, that when you put sugar in it, that makes your body acid or acidic. And then you would need to try to balance that out. And that's where you get osteoporosis or osteopenia, because your body's trying to strip that calcium out of your bones to balance it. So if you look at the most acidic, go, oh, well, I don't have sugar. I just do equal or aspartame. Unfortunately, that's also acid producing. So what you want to do, and I'm sorry about the chocolate ladies, it's just the reality of the world. But on the right side, you can take a look. And if you really like peanuts, but you also like almonds, well, then just try to eat more almonds. You can see that corn oil and canola are not so great, and olive oil is kind of on the high side, which means that's really great for you. If you are if you're a kidney stone producer, sometimes being too alkaline can be a problem, and so you do have to worry a little bit about that. But in general, for most of the population, there's a website that's called What the Bleep Can I Eat? And it has different diets, for instance, low FODMAP, or anti-inflammatory diet, or ones for histamine, because some people will have MCAS, or mast cell activation syndrome. And mast cells produce histamine. And so when you have histamine in your diet, it'll really mess with you. You think about antihistamines as being having to do with more environmental offenders like pollen, but histamines also are also found in foods. And this is amazing. And it talks about vitamin D levels. And again, the vitamin D is now very well known as being something that's incredibly important in our health. But what it basically says is that you can prevent all of these diseases by just having a decent amount of serum vitamin D levels. So that's all I wanted to get across in this particular slide, is that vitamin D is really important. If someone says, quick question, what's a decent amount of vitamin D? I'd say on the low end would be about 1,000 to 2,000 IU per day. During the wintertime, I routinely will do 5,000 IU a day, because I have patients that come in and say, I feel miserable. How you doing? And so I'm surrounded by bugs, so I do the best I can not not get sick. Early in the conversation, someone had mentioned about, well, what supplements are good and what supplements are not good. And there's a comparative guide to nutritional supplements. There's a nerd named Lyle McWilliam. He spoke to a bunch of experts in nutrition, and he said, "What would you take to optimize your health?" And that the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, is actually quite an old measure that was used in World War II to find out what's the minimum amount of vitamin C to keep you from getting scurvy, or what's the minimum amount of vitamin D to keep you from having nerve disorders. So it wasn't really about optimal health, but more about avoiding mineral and vitamin deficiencies, syndromes. And interestingly, the word vitamin came from vital mineral. So they were thinking just purely minerals back in the 1800s, or whenever they came up with the term vitamin. It's kind of interesting. So, like I said, Lyle McWilliam spoke to them and said, well, how much vitamin A should a good healthy person take? And different people had different ideas. Phyllis Balch said, well, I think that 7,500 milligrams or IU is good. And another expert said, I think 1,000 is better. And some said, 10,000. And let's get this right. sorry, so 7,500, yeah, so 1,000 IU. And then others would say, well, really just 5,000 is fine. And they blended it and averaged it, and that's where you see the numbers that you see in front of you. And you can see that beta carotene is quite high in comparison to vitamin A, and it's because vitamin A can reach toxic levels in your body. So, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K are all fat soluble vitamins, some of which can reach dangerous levels, most do not. And then the rest are water soluble, which means if you take a lot of vitamin C, you're fine. It will, whatever you don't use, you do urinate out. And so if you look at Centrum brand, I consider 70 as a passing score, like in school. And you can see out of 100, they scored 5.2 out of 100. So that's a pretty failing score. And you can see that Kirkland Signature is really just Centrum. So I wouldn't call it performance. I would call it underwhelming, actually. So if you look at GNC, you can see that this is better, and it scores 46%. And you can see that it meets or exceeds several of what the nutrients are. And the reason why this is in yellow is because these are the two that are fat soluble, so vitamin A. And then you got Douglas Labs, which is something I recommend regularly, and that scores in the 95 percentile. And there's a couple others that are also as good. It doesn't include things like alpha lipoic acid or coenzyme Q10 because CoQ10 is quite expensive. And I think they were just trying to keep the price down. And so they didn't include that in their multi. So if you were to go to a physician and say, I've got dry eyes. They may give you drops for the dry eyes, but the underlying cause is an omega 3 deficiency. And you may have heard of omega 6s, omega 9s. The omega 3s are found in fish, flaxseed, borage oil, all of these things. Um, so so you want to reduce your omega 6s because we get enough of that in our fried foods. But certainly the omega 3s are something that a lot of folks are deficient in. And you can see all of the things that it can cause. And I usually recommend about 1,000 milligrams where it's EPA plus DHA. So those are the two breakdowns of types of omega 3s. And so getting the combination of those. So when you look at the bottle, it might say 1,000. And then when you look at the back of the bottle, it'll say DHA is 250 and EPA is 100. So you're not getting the full 1,000, which would be important. I mentioned about magnesium. And so magnesium is involved with over 400 enzymatic reactions in our bodies. It's used in ERs on a regular basis for people who come in with cardiac distress. It helps with absorption of minerals. For people who suffer from migraines, a good deal of the time they are low on magnesium. It helps with energy production in the body. There are just so many good things about magnesium that are certainly worth consideration. And before bed, I take 7 salt magnesium, which Fullscript has available. And it really helps me sleep well. And it's also a natural muscle relaxant. I don't really have difficulty sleeping, but I tend to use it anyway. And the the World Health Organization suggested that about 90% of all chronic illness is due to stress. And so I thought that I'd talk a little bit about stress. And we circle back that all the studies for cortisol levels and stress find that people are stressed out, they have bad sleep, and so they wake up and they're chugging coffee. And unfortunately, the more you can reduce the stimulants, the less your adrenal glands are fried, and you'll do better. Exercising regularly there it demonstrates that it will reduce cortisol. And interestingly enough, if you are a triathlete and you are really prepping for a race and you're running, your cortisol levels will actually rise. And that's because your body thinks you're running away from something, and so it considers you in some kind of danger. Sleep quality, of course, is huge. Having realistic expectations, what that means is, let's say it's Sunday, you want to have some coffee with your friend, and you're driving across town, and all of a sudden there's terrible traffic. You start getting upset. Well, why are you upset? It's because, well, it's Sunday. There shouldn't be such a pile of traffic. And then that kind of can spiral you off. So if you're just aware of one, having realistic expectations about things, then you will be less affected by it. And also, people tend to hold themselves to unreasonable standards, in which case, here, very type A personalities, people always running. And you got to remember where you're running towards. It's a tombstone. It is the grave. Why are you rushing to the grave? So just take your time, smell the roses. A A lot of psychologists talk about reframing, and what that is it's being able to understand when you're completely stressed about a report that you're giving and the deadline is looming, that you find out that your mom had a stroke, and next thing you know, you're on the phone trying to get a flight out to Michigan. And then that report that you had at the office suddenly was not the center of your universe. So reframing is just allowing yourself to take a step back, look at things in perspective, and realize that the end of the world is not coming. Some people have belief systems like, well, if you want to get something done, you got to do it yourself. And so if you're in a team type environment and you're doing three-quarters of the work, well, you're going to fry yourself. Being able to recognize that working with your colleagues in tandem can be helpful, and just actually taking a step back and looking at yourself and recognizing, oh, okay, my belief system is, you know, if I want to get it done right, I've got to do it myself, and having to shift that paradigm. I tend to find humor in a lot of things. For the patients here, you know that I'm seriously easily amused, and when I have a circumstance that comes in that could be very, very stressful. I was flying to Savannah, and we were a little bit late for the airplane. We made it on time, but we were cutting it close. But I was kind of cracking jokes just because it's, what are you going to do? You can't change the reality. You just gotta roll with it and hope we get down there. I said to her that the my vacation starts the moment that I step out of my office from work. So it's not, oh no, we have to actually arrive at in Savannah before the vacation begins. So let's talk a little bit about maintaining brain health. Something that the boomers who are researchers these days, and we in the Gen X community are quite concerned about maintaining our brain health. And so there's been a lot of research done on this. And coconut oil is one of the biggies, and it's super easy and inexpensive. You just want to make sure that you get the virgin organic uh, cold pressed coconut oil. I know it's a mouthful, but nowadays that's pretty common. About 10 years ago, you actually had to search for it to make sure that it was virgin and organic and cold pressed. But nowadays, you can go to Mom's and it's going to be there for you. And about a tablespoon a day is all that's necessary. I would start out with a teaspoon, in your coffee, or just you can cook with it, or you can just take it directly because it can soften your stool. So I would start out with just a little bit and work your way up to a tablespoon. And the reason why it works for people who have Alzheimer's is that it's an alternate fuel source for our brain. That you hear about diabetes, there's type 1, there's type 2. Type 1 is the adolescent or childhood. Type 2 is the adult onset. And now they're talking about type 3 diabetes. And type 3 diabetes is actually that of dementia. And they found that our brain cells become insulin resistant and have a difficult time absorbing glucose. And so the medium chain triglycerides in coconut oil actually will produce ketones, and that can feed our brain in an alternative way. And once again, you can see all of the goodness. And what's really great about coconut oil is, yeah, it's antibacterial, it's antiviral, it's antifungal, so many good things in it. And you can also see all of the conditions that it treats. There's also a number of brain supplements, ones for memory, ones for energy, ones for mood for people who have um, feel a little bit depressed. People who feel like they are overstimulated, then the brain calm is quite good. There's something called choline, which is in our brains, and sometimes people lack that. So phosphatidyl choline is something that is hot, and researchers are looking into it as being something that's a good nootropic for our brains. And we can learn a lot from animals that they stretch, and we tend not to. And so getting in the habit, I started doing yoga a couple months ago, and I just found that I feel better in general. And when I do yoga before the day, it just seems like the day goes a little bit better. So I really find that stretching is amazing for us. And Tai Chi and Qigong, I train in the Chen style and the Yang style of Tai Chi, and this is a competition a couple years ago, and I it was a lot of fun. And Tai Chi, which means supreme ultimate, and Tai Chi Chuan. Chuan means fist or supreme ultimate boxing, and it's really great for increasing superoxide dismutase (SOD), which is a anti-aging enzyme in our bodies, and can help you live longer. And Qigong also triggers that. Seniors who do Tai Chi also have less falls, and they have greater bone density. And of course, I already spoke about yoga. It's not just the physical part of yoga. There's also a lot of philosophy associated with it, which sometimes in some classes they gloss over, and others they embrace readily. In the Silk Road, there's a lot of communication among the Indians and the Chinese, and so um, some of the traditions from qigong blend over into yogic traditions as well. Meditation is always great. If you just do 5 minutes a day, that's 5 minutes more than you otherwise would do. And there's some incredible studies on meditation and how it affects the actual gray matter of our brains. So there's actually a structural change. It's not just about a theta meditation where your brain frequency changes. And so before I pop back me on the screen, this fullscript.com is where you can get supplements at 10% off. And so for those of you who are interested, you can jot this down, fullscript.com, welcome, and then Bill Reddy. And you can go and see what, if you already have a supplement, like let's say you take Thorn Vitamin C, you can check to see if you can get it cheaper on FullScript. And I'm located right in the heart of Annandale. And my website is pretty easy. It's billreddy.com. And the name of my practice is Vital Point Acupuncture. So with that being said, I'm going to get out of this and get back on the screen so I can see everyone. Okay. All right. So I'm not too sure if Donna's still with us and if she wants to help moderate this. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions people have. I know I really buzzed through it, but I just wanted to make sure that we had time at the end so that you can, uh, you know, come out and ask any questions that are important to you or any health
I
concerns you have.
I am here, Bill.
Oh, okay. That's great.
And if anyone would like to ask Bill a question or even just share what you learned, new information that you learned, that would be wonderful. And um I guess most people want to stay behind the camera, so that that is your prerogative if you don't want to come on screen.
I do have a
Jillian?
question. Yes, I do have a question about probiotics. I did see a nutritionist a few years back who recommended not being on them all the time, just to take certain, like 2, 3 week courses of them. Do you recommend being on them all the time? Something with 50 billion plus CFUs?
That's a great question. I would start out with doing a comprehensive stool analysis, and that allows you to kind of know where you are and what your baseline is. Sometimes I say don't mess with it if it ain't broke. But there's times when people are have an imbalance or that they've got H. pylori or something that's really messing with them, or a dysbiosis, which means you have an imbalance of good and bad bacteria, in which case it would make sense, especially for people who have a history of antibiotic use. 3 days of antibiotics can wipe your good bacteria for 6 months or more. It's really, really considerable. So by taking the probiotics for several weeks post antibiotic use and just try to re-inoculate and get the good bacteria in is the way I look at it. There's some folks who do take probiotics on a consistent basis, and I don't really have an issue with that. In some Chinese medicines, they'll say take Sundays off. So they'll do 6 days on and 1 day off. And an expert in omega 3s said if you take flaxseed consistently after 3 to 6 months, shift over and take krill oil and do that for 6 months. And apparently it's because your body can accommodate and then it doesn't react as well to it, which was news to me. I thought an omega 3 is an omega 3 is omega 3, but apparently the researcher believes differently. I hope that answers your question that basically, if you're not out of balance, then yeah, if you have chronic constipation or something, taking probiotics can help things move a little bit better and can also help support immune system function as well.
Great. Thank you so much. That does help.
Okay. What else you got for me? Come on. Come on.
Barbara?
I'm madly going through my head trying to think of what I just heard. Nothing comes to mind at the moment. I was looking, well, I can share that I was taking Nordic Naturals omega-3, and then I checked on the back. Although they do advertise it's less than 1,000, it's 690 milligram of omega-3.
Okay.
I was wondering if there was something else out there that might be better.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to grab a few bottles, and I should have had them right here, but
Oh, that's okay. While you're doing that, I also, when it says RDA and 1,000 milligrams of this or that, I'm wondering, is that the same for a 6 foot guy who weighs, I don't know, 180 or whatever, and a woman who is maybe 5'5", and weighs 125, is it the same amount regardless of height and weight?
That's a great question. So so they do actually separate men and women. And
Mhm.
so, for instance, the RDA for magnesium for a woman is 275 milligrams, but for men it's 375 milligrams. But they do use the standard height and weight of a man and a woman to get these numbers.
Gotcha.
Let's see. So we have a krill oil,
Okay.
and krill is good because it packs a punch with not having the monster capsule. It's these pills are not horse pills.
Oh yeah, that's
Right.
manageable.
So yeah, so that's really not choking you down. And let's see, and so DHE and EPA combined. Um, Oh, it's got some astaxanthin in it and some other things interesting. So yeah, this only actually has about 300 total. Although it says krill oil is 1,000 milligrams, and so that's what I mean is that you have 1,000 milligrams of the actual carrier agent, but what the DHA and EPA combination is can be lower. Um, this is called ONE, and I guess it looks backwards, so I do apologize for that. But Pure Encapsulations makes a great multivite, and it's just got all the good stuff in it that's needed. Something I've been using my body as as a test bed is PQQ, and PQQ is a chemical name that I can't pronounce, and it's something that I had stumbled upon. It's really good for mitochondrial production in people's bodies, and so mitochondria is the center of the energy in our cells, and so I just thought I would try that. And I can't say that I'm bouncing off the walls or doing cartwheels or anything, but you can't blame me for trying. And then this is the 7-salt magnesium
Salt,
product,
magnesium,
and
Gina.
yeah, and that's Biogina. So, and I just feel like it's great to have extra magnesium in our bodies. I wrote an article a while back on optimizing health through transdermal magnesium, and so transdermal magnesium is where you spray it on your skin, it gets right into your capillary bed and right into your bloodstream. And again, I I apologize, Barbara, for buzzing through. I just wanted to make sure that I got as much information as I could get out to you guys.
No. You did fine. It just takes me a while to take it in. I'm gonna have to say goodbye now because my dog is telling me that I have overstayed my time and I need to take her out. But
Okay,
this was really helpful, and I thank you very much for this.
well, it's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here. And please, if there's anyone else that have any personal health issues, I'd be happy to answer your questions. That's why I'm here.
Thank you.
I have a question for you, Bill. I know obviously once we optimize our immune system, um, with all of your great suggestions, we will feel better. But is there a way to actually know that we have optimized our immune health? And I had asked a doctor, and they said there are no like specific inflammatory marker tests or anything specific. What besides just feeling better, not having brain fog, sleeping better, how will we know that we have optimized it?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that is something that's a little bit harder to measure. That certainly, if you get a complete blood count, you could find out if your white blood cells are low, like leukopenia, for instance, and then through acupuncture or other things, you can boost that and then retest and say, okay, now my my white blood cells are better. Or doing the microbiome test, you could find out that your microbiome has what's called dysbiosis, which means that there's an imbalance of good and bad bacteria. Or let's say you've got parasites. And I didn't talk about them here, but you can do parasite cleanses as well. And so what happens is stress is not just if your boss is difficult or if or traffic on the way to work. It can be an infection. Uh, so stress on an organism can be a parasite, and so you
Mm.
just don't feel 100%. For those listening, if you feel good for a couple days or longer, and then you kind of crash, and then you feel terrible for a couple days, and then you swing back, that's usually an indicator of parasites and
Oh.
uh, and some endocrine disorders as well, where you just don't feel 100%, and you can't put your finger on specifically why. And a comprehensive stool analysis would point out precisely what's messing with you. It can pick up the parasites, etc. And then a hair mineral analysis, which I had done because in my clinic it used to be a dental clinic, and there was an X-ray room, and I was cutting through the walls to replace the walls, and found this very thick, very heavy material, which I thought it was acoustic paneling, and I found out it was actually lead. And so not only was I handling lead, but I was cutting lead, and I was
Uh,
sweeping lead, and I was inhaling lead, and I had acute lead poisoning. And it caused me to, I would measure, oh, okay, it's 43 and 3/8 of an inch, and go over to the piece of wood to cut. And I lost that number. It was gone in my head. And I thought,
mm.
that's not like me. I'm pretty good with numbers. And then I went to the electrical panel, and it said X-ray room, and then it struck. So there are things like EDTA, which is a chemical binder that you can take both orally and also IV and get it out. So full circle, I did a hair analysis, was able to identify what my lead levels were, waited 6 months after I did this detox, and then retested, and now my lead levels are not measurable. And I do have a
Ah.
little bit of aluminum and a little bit of mercury, but that's from the accumulation from the 6 months. So I think that it's good to do tests, just to check to see if your mitochondrial function is okay. There are certain things like long COVID that a C-reactive protein, CRP,
Hmm.
homocysteine, IL-6, these are measures of inflammation in your body, which would indicate that you've got something festering. And then if you do, in fact, have these chemicals elevated, then there are steps you can take to deal with that.
Oh, okay. So there are numerous paths to take, instead of just saying, "Oh, there is no test for inflammatory markers." There really are.
Oh yes, yeah. There are several tests for inflammatory markers.
Mm.
Like I said, the CRP and
Mhm.
homocysteine levels are the most common, and then you have IL-6, which is another one, and each one targets different things. There's TNF alpha, which is a tumor necrosis factor.
Oh,
Sorry,
wow.
to blather all these things out. I know it's difficult for non-medical people, but and also for people who have brain fog, that there's measures of neuroinflammation as well.
Oh my gosh. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I was unaware about the neuroinflammation until I started studying long COVID.
Thank you.
Certainly. Anyone else got something for me? Well, I'm so pleased that you guys took the time out of your day to come check it out. I hope that you got what you need. And for those patients of mine, obviously, the next time I see you, if you go, I had a few questions about this, and by all means, that's what I'm here for.
And you did provide your, actually, Bill, I believe, you said your email. If anyone would like to contact you to, make an appointment to consult with you privately, would you like to give your phone number? I can put it in the chat. And then that way, anyone who watches the video will see it.
Okay. Do I need to reshare my screen, or can you see my screen right now?
cannot see your screen. Or you
Okay.
can just read it to me. I'm ready to type.
Okay. That sounds good. It's
Oh, there we go.
ACU, yeah, underscore health at yahoo.com. That's my email address. And
Um,
billreddy.com, you can actually click on that and go to make an appointment. And I have an electronic health records that handles that easily, which is nice.
Okay, ACU underscore health. I'm typing at yahoo.com. And the phone number is 703-719-8803. Okay. I am posting that.
Excellent.
Well, if no one has further questions, you do know how to reach Bill now. And thank you so much, Bill. It was just a very, very timely and necessary presentation with, like you said, the microplastics and toxins, and there's just so much bombarding us. And I don't want to mention sugar, but I guess I have to. I have to face up to that. So this was very helpful.
Well,
And
thank you
thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Yeah, and I'll say thank for everyone else for your time and attention. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening.
Yes. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Donna.
Well, that's my
Oh,
pleasure.
you're welcome. Bye, Jillian.
Take care, everyone.